For those of you who are listening and not watching, Liz is wielding a sonic screwdriver at me, presumably because the theme of this month is time travel.
Welcome to This Is Lit, a podcast where we drink and talk about our favorite books. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey.
So raise a glass and let's get started.
Okay, Liz, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking 14 Hands Chardonnay.
That's a lot of hands.
It's a horse reference. That's how they do
measure horses.
Yeah, horse heights.
So there are 14 hands worth of horses in your wine bottle?
Yes, 14 horsepower.
Oh, I see. That's what that means. I'm drinking...
You all right?
I'm drinking watermelon vodka.
Okay, that's it.
Mm-hmm. It was on sale last time we got to go to the liquor store. So, watermelon vodka out of a copper mug because I have one.
Hey, no judgment. Yes, the theme for this month is time travel. I'm a little excited.
Yes, time travel is our theme. And our first book, the book we're discussing today, is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. A Wrinkle in Time is a Newbery Award-winning children's novel.
Yes.
From what, like the 70s?
I think the copyright in mine is 1963.
Yeah, it's fairly old.
1962.
Yeah. I have, my copy that I have is actually my mom's copy from when she was a kid. It's a relatively, oh yeah, I've seen that one before. That's a pretty one. Yeah, mine's the old one with got the terrifying bald-headed centaur on the front cover. Very good.
Yeah.
So A Wrinkle in Time is, like I said, a children's novel. It actually might be the only novel I know of that starts with the phrase, "It was a dark and stormy night."
Yeah, for that being a cliche opening, it's even on the back of mine. For that being such a cliche opening, not a lot of things open with.
Well, I don't know if it's a cliche or if I don't know if this book invented it and then it's become a joke. You know, I'm not really sure.
Possibly. I don't know.
Let me look it up really quick. I guess just Google "It was a dark and stormy night" etymology.
I guess so. Etymology is the $5 vocab word of the day.
Etymology.
Etymology.
It was a dark and stormy night is often mocked and parodied, considered to represent the archetypal example of a florid, melodramatic style of fiction writing, also known as purple prose. The status of the sentence as an archetype for bad writing comes from the opening sentence of English novelist Edward Bulwer Lytton's 1830 novel, Paul Clifford. And here's the first sentence of that novel. "It was a dark and stormy night. The rain fell in torrents, except at occasional intervals when it was checked by a violent gust of wind which swept up the streets, for it is in London that our scene lies, rattling along the housetops and fiercely agitating the scanty flame of the lamps that struggled against the darkness."
This is one sentence?
That's one sentence. There's one semicolon in it, there's an M dash in it, and there are 1, 2, 3 commas and a parenthetical notation. That's some purple prose, baby.
Use a period, my friends.
At any rate,
that sentence is 2 weeks late.
It was a dark and stormy night. It's kind of a cliche, but Madeleine L'Engle opens her book with it, and that's the first thing I remember about this book. Like when I think about this book, have you read it before?
This was the first time I've actually ever read this.
Really? Have you seen any of the movies?
I've never seen a movie.
That's wild.
So this is my first exposure to it. The only thing I know about the movie is that your Chris is in it.
Yeah, Chris Pine.
Your boy.
And he's in the most recent version of the film. A Wrinkle in Time, like we said, it's from the 60s, but it's a novel that I first read at a very young age. I think I was probably 7 or 8 when I first read it, because it's my mom's favorite fantasy novel growing up.
It was my mom's too, and she didn't tell me that until I told her we were reading it. She's like, the teacher used to read it to us for 20 minutes after lunch every single day in 6th grade, and it was my favorite part of the day. We read the whole series that way.
Yeah, there's an entire series this book is a part of, and this one is the first one. And like I said, it was my mom's favorite. And so I read it growing up. Like I said, I was probably 7 or 8 the first time I read it. And I've read it many times. I've seen the ABC made-for-TV version of the movie. I've seen the Disney high-budget version of the movie with Oprah and Chris Pine as well. And I've read the book. I've read every book in the series. So for me, it's one that I'm super familiar with, and it was kind of nice to come back to because, again, I don't have the mental capacity for
it's just
much beyond that at this point.
I can tell you right now that, God, I needed this book right now.
Yeah.
This book found me at the right time, even though I'm much older than its target audience.
Yeah. Yeah, so the book, like I said, opens with The Dark and Stormy Night. This is very, very traditional, like heroine travels through time and saves the world kind of thing.
Yeah,
like
a portal fiction.
Yeah, it's a very, very early portal fiction. I mean, obviously, portal fiction has been around for a long time because, I mean, Alice in Wonderland was probably the first example of it, and then even Wizard of Oz came, you know, before this did. But it's a very quintessential portal fiction, young girl who is a chosen one who has to save the world by traveling through alternate universes.
I would argue the chosen one is not necessarily Meg Murray, who the book is mainly about, but I think it's more Charles Wallace in this situation. And she kind of becomes the chosen one.
Yeah, I would agree with you. So the book starts with Meg Wallace, introducing us to Meg Wallace on a very dark night in her house. And Meg Murray. What did I say? I said
Meg Wallace. Charles Wallace.
So Meg Murray is she's what, like a 10, 11-year-old? 13.
Yeah,
she's 13.
Yeah, she's 13.
So she's a 13-year-old, and she's the kind of character you'd expect her to be, you know, a little bit of a loner. All of her friends think she's stubborn, and her teachers think that she's, you know, troublesome. She's kind of considered the weird kid.
She has brilliant scientist parents, but it is made very clear early on that her father is not around.
Yeah, so
she fully believes he's going to come back.
Meg has a missing dad, and he's been missing for some time. His name is Alexander, and he went missing, and she kind of withdrew as a result of that. She's very close with her father. She kind of withdrew, kind of became a bit of a troublesome kid at school, kind of a loner and an outsider.
Yeah, and the entire town, like, since this is set in the 60s, the entire town gossips. Of course.
Oh yeah, she lives in a small enough town that everyone knows.
Yeah, they all think Mr. Murray has run off with some dame, and to the point where even her school principal calls her and is like, "Isn't it time you face fact that your father isn't coming back?" Which, if a school principal ever did that to my child, I would beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, no, it's very, very shitty. But the thing is, the book essentially starts out introducing us to Meg, kind of giving us a rundown of this when Meg gets up in the middle of the night because she can't sleep because of a storm, and finds her little brother, Charles Wallace, who is a 5-year-old, down in the kitchen. And Wallace is probably my favorite character. He's incredibly precocious.
Speaks in full, complete sentences. He knows words, but can't.
He knows words, but has sometimes communicating them. But he also almost can read minds, especially Meg.
I think he's more of an. I feel like he's more of an empath than a telepath. Like he can read emotion more than he can read minds. That's kind of the vibe I got from him. Yeah.
He. So he is down in the living room eating bread and jam whenever Meg comes down from her attic bedroom.
Which, not a bad decision. Which, not a bad decision.
Yeah. And they are interrupted in their snack time by a middle-of-the-night visitor.
Mrs. Whatsit.
Yeah, Mrs. Whatsit. Mrs. Whatsit is described as being, like, covered by like a bunch of blankets and
layers and layers and layers of clothes.
Like she's wearing like a coat over a dress over an overcoat over, like she's just piled under a bunch of clothes and you can't really get a good look at her. She basically rolls in and she and Meg's mother are kind of Meg's mother also joins them, are kind of having this conversation, and then she starts talking to the children, just saying all sorts of weird things and being kind of vague, and then she mentions a tesseract.
Yeah, she tells Mrs. Murray, "You're right, dear, a tesseract does exist," and leaves. Which, at that point, you're all like, what is a tesseract? And my Marvel-ass brain was like, oh, space portals.
Yeah. The thing that's interesting about this is that, like, a tesseract was not a phrase that you would know when this book came out. But because of Marvel, it's like Marvel. A pretty well known
portals
at this point. But yeah, so Catherine Murray is kind of overcome by this strange woman coming into her house and telling her
that's what she and her husband were working on before he disappeared.
Yes, she and her husband had been researching the potential existence of other universes and of tesseracts to travel between them before he vanished, and it wasn't research that people should have really known about, so she doesn't know why Miss What's-It knows anything about it.
This strange lady who's come to their house in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. And so then the next day, after Meg has found all this information about the Tesseract out, that's whenever we are introduced to Calvin.
Yes. How do you say his last name? Calvin O'Keefe? O'Keefe.
Yes. Calvin O'Keefe, who is too old for Meg.
How old is he? How much older is he?
He's a junior in high school.
Well, you know, Sailor Moon, she was 14 and he was 18.
Yeah, it's very, very much a product of its time. But he's a junior in high school, which would make him about 17, maybe even 18.
4 years. Yeah, 4 or 5 years older than me.
I don't think 4 years is too much older. I think the fact that she's still in junior high and he's in high school is a thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's a big difference between a high schooler and a junior higher.
When you're that young, yeah. It's different if you're like 25 and 30. But when you're like 13 and 18.
Yeah, I think whenever
one
you're
of you is legal and the other one is not.
I think it's like when you're a kid, it's more about experience.
Yeah.
Like people who are at the same experience level than you than it is about the specific number. And then as you become an adult, the number becomes less.
Yeah.
Like I have an aunt and an uncle who are 11 years apart in age. And like if they were dating whenever she was 11, obviously that would have been a problem. Yeah. But like they met each other whenever she was graduating college. So like they had similar life experiences. He was also at college because he had waited to go to college. So like it's kind of a different thing. But yeah, he is a high school junior who's popular, but a little awkward himself.
Yeah, my grandparents are 7 years apart.
Yeah. Yeah. So Calvin is a high school junior who is a little bit awkward as well. He's pretty popular with his friends and stuff, but he's just kind of weird.
He gets vibes. He has a little bit of intuition on his side. He
does. And so he really likes Charles Wallace. I mean, he obviously has like kind of the closer friendship with Meg, but he's very fond of Charles Wallace, and he thinks like he just trusts him. And Charles Wallace is like, let's go to this haunted house in town that I know about. And so Meg and Calvin join him on the trip to the house. And it turns out that the house is not haunted. It actually belongs to Mrs. What's-It. And Calvin already knew that.
One of her companions, Mrs. Who.
Yes, Mrs. Who is very strange.
Big glasses.
Giant. I always think of her as having like owl eyes.
Yeah, big owl eyes. The big bottle glasses.
Mrs. Who has owl eyes, big glasses, and Mrs. Witch is a voice.
Yeah.
Just a voice. You don't see anybody. There's just a voice. And kind of, she can kind of materialize in and out of view a little bit.
Yeah.
So they're all very weird, and they say that they want to help Meg rescue her father.
Yeah.
They say they know about her father. They say that he has been captured by something in an alternate dimension, and they want her to come with them to save him.
Yeah, and so we've kind of basically fast forwarded a little bit to Uriel.
Yeah.
Right? Where they have their true forms. Mrs. Witch is kind of a shimmering, Mrs. Witch is kind of a shimmering. Mrs. Who still has the owl eyes, and Mrs. What's-It is the crazy weird centaur thing.
Yeah.
But it is alluded to that they could be guardians or angels, Mrs.
Yeah, Uriel is the first, like, basically they re-explain the Tesseract and they convince the kids to come with them. The kids agree, and the first stop is this planet. It's a planet, like, called Uriel, but it's presumably in a different dimension, I guess.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's not in ours, but it's basically a utopia, and they are all kind of these guardian angel centaur creatures.
Yes.
Like, I mean, Mrs.
One of them used to be a star.
Yeah. Mrs. What's-it's the only one who appears like the centaur creatures, but they are kind of implicated to all be the same type of being in different parts of maybe its life cycle or its life stage. But at any rate, Mrs. What's-it's the only one who appears as a centaur.
Yeah.
And
this is how they explain tessering, which is we have the handy dandy illustration in the book, which thank goodness.
Yeah. So the ant on a string is the explanation. Is basically like if you use a tesseract, you're able to bring a string, fold it down, and make the distance between.
Yeah, you're able to make the fabric of space and time and reality. Instead of being a straight line, you fold it up. So it seems like the ant got there in no time at all.
Right. And they also explain that the universe is basically under attack from some
black thing
creature called the Black Thing.
And it's just evil. It radiates evil and badness.
This is one of the interesting things about fantasy, especially older fantasy. We've talked before about, J.R.R. Tolkien's, in like kind of underlying racism in like all orcs, all creatures of this race are evil. There's not any good reason for it. They just are. The same thing you kind of see here is on a lesser scale. Obviously, it's less of that and more of the trope of sometimes things are just evil for the sake of being evil, like and over the top evil, and like can't be changed, can't be saved. It's just that concept that you get a lot in older fantasy where there's not a lot of nuance between good and evil. That way it's not hard for you. And I just noticed that because a lot of more modern properties kind of tend to challenge assumptions of things like that. And
that kind of started in the 80s and 90s about the villain story.
Blade Runner. And,
Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula.
Yeah, Dracula. Or, the Alien movies, like where maybe
Terminator
who is bad, is not so cut and dried. But in these older fantasy novels and properties, you do tend to see a pretty straightforward, these guys are good and these guys are bad.
This does have a lot of underlying Christian mythology to it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so this, that is also very reminiscent of, demons and creatures of hell that are beyond salvation, kind of a thing.
Yes. So, it's a pretty straightforward one as far as that stuff goes. Like, there's not a lot of complexity to the good versus evil battle here. It's a pretty straightforward.
And even in other creatures and races they meet, there are, later, there's creatures are either they're all good or they're all bad.
Right. Yeah. There's not anything else.
They're all repressed.
Yeah. So after this is all explained to them, they are taken to visit a woman called the Happy Medium.
Yes, the Happy Medium, and she only looks at good things. That cheers her up.
She is a happy medium because she does not acknowledge the bad things that are going on. Which is kind of an interesting commentary in the book because the women, Mrs. Who, Mrs. What's-it, and Mrs. Which, are kind of critical of the happy medium.
They are. Because they're the ones that are fighting the black thing all the time.
Yeah, they're trying to save the universe, but the happy medium is not really willing to acknowledge that there are bad things going on, which is interesting in this current time of my life.
Yeah.
I think about, I've always
just because you refuse to acknowledge it's going on doesn't mean it's not going on.
Well, but there's that, but there's also like a certain level of it, which becomes non-productive, right? There has to be, ironically, a happy medium. Because
yeah, I think that was the point.
Yeah, if you engage with everything, just engage with all news and all information,
you're going to drown.
You're getting too much. And especially right now, like, I mean, I've kind of foregone looking at the news.
I give myself 1 hour a day, and it's usually like a late night news satire show, because if I do it straight, I can't handle it.
Yeah, I've just pretty much stopped engaging with it. Like, the most information I get from the actual news is when my Google recommended articles are like, hey, surprise, did you know Kansas City is looking to be the next hotspot for coronavirus?
All my Google articles are suggestions about Neil Gaiman.
Well, that must be so nice for you. But yeah, so like my attitude towards this has definitely changed. I used to be the kind of person who was like, if I'm not engaging with news, reading news, doing things like that all the time, then I'm
not being a responsible person.
Right. I'm not being responsible as a person within society. And now I'm like, you have to walk away from it sometimes. Otherwise, it's become the opposite of productive. It's going to make things worse.
Yeah. You got to pay attention, but you can't drown in it.
Exactly. So yes, my attitude towards this whole concept of like all or nothing of coming into contact with news has become a lot more nuanced. Because I used to, when I would read this book, I also would be annoyed with the happy medium. And now I'm like, I get it. You can't just do that all the time. Yeah. Otherwise you lose it. But the happy medium they do convince the happy medium to show them the earth and the darkness that's kind of covering it.
Yeah, the black thing is so big that Earth is in the shadow of the black thing. And so you're like, the only reason the black thing has not taken over the Earth is because you've had warriors, you've had fighters, you've had lights against it.
So they talk about people like Jesus and Gandhi,
Da Vinci, Buddha.
Yeah, so like all these religious figures, scientists, philosophers, artists who are essentially have been fighting against the black thing, whether they knew it or not.
Yeah, people trying to fill the world with art and joy and happiness, or just, trying to help.
And that's when we find out that Mrs. Whatsit was a star that exploded. Yeah, trying to get rid of the darkness. And then they go to the most interesting place in my opinion, in the book, is the planet Camazotz.
Interesting.
Well, I have a very distinct memory.
It's very Ray Bradbury.
There's an ABC movie version of this book. It's like, I think it's ABC. It's like a made-for-TV movie that came out a long time ago, like early 2000s or late 90s. And in it, Camazotz is shot so interestingly with all these kids, like, so all the front doors open at the same time, and all these moms let all their children out into the yard, and then the children has a red ball and they're standing on the patio bouncing it all in unison. And then one kid starts getting offbeat with his bouncing, and is playing with the ball differently than the other kids, and is taken away by guards on the street or something, right?
His mother pulls him into the house.
No, but I mean in the made-for-TV movie, like some guards come in.
I haven't seen it.
And I saw that, and it just stuck with me. That's like I have a recurring nightmare of being on Camazotz and walking down the street ever since I read this book for the first time. Like, I've had this recurring nightmare.
Well, it's something that it's like everybody does the same thing at the same time, and there's so much bureaucracy.
Well, and it's like, the thing that's unsettling about it is not what they're doing, because they're all doing normal things that normal people do, but they're doing them perfectly in sync with each other. And that's what makes it unsettling. Terrifying. Yeah. So they're all under control of a hive mind. It's like a Borg situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why they all move together. So they have to go to the central government of this place, a place called Central Intelligence.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah.
Central Intelligence.
All caps the first time, the second time normal caps. Central Intelligence. And
they go, and little Charles Wallace he's like, no, it's okay, I can handle anything. It's like, you're 5.
Yeah, they're worried about Charles Wallace partially because he's a little kid.
He was warned
and also
about his arrogance.
He was warned about his arrogance. He's slightly psychic, and so he can interact and interface more easily with these creatures, both the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And so everyone's kind of worried about him because of his ability to get closer to them and interface with them better.
He's the most susceptible.
He's the most vulnerable, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're taken to meet the man with the red eyes.
The man with the red eyes. There are a lot of names in this, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of names that aren't names.
Yeah, there's a lot of characters who are named only by what they are, rather than having a name. Like we've got Miss What's It, Miss Who, and Miss Which are kind of weird names. Yeah. And then you've got, the black thing.
The man
with the red eyes.
It.
Central Intelligence and it. Yeah. There's just but anyway, the man with the red eyes is telepathic, and he can control people's minds and cast hypnotic spells. He also says that he knows where Alexander Murray is, their father.
He knows where Meg's father is, which that has been Meg's really sole focus through this whole thing, is to protect Charles Wallace and find her father. She doesn't care that the universe is at stake. She wants her father.
Yeah,
because once her father comes back, everything is going to be okay once her father comes back.
Yeah. So Meg, and this is, again, it does come down to his arrogance, but I think it's a mixture of arrogance and also he wants to do this for Meg. Yeah. Charles Wallace decides that he will try to read the man's mind, the man with the red eyes.
He will try and go into it because he was told he could come back out of it, and he can't.
Yeah, he is hypnotized, and he's under the influence of the man, and he takes Meg and Calvin to this prison where Alexander is being held because he wouldn't submit to the group mind of it.
No, he would not.
And so that's where Alexander is. And this is all very esoteric for a children's book. Like at this point, we get to a point where it stops being physical places and things, and it's all just conceptual ideas that are happening inside their mind.
Like the tube that Mr. Murray is in. Calvin says it's kind of like one of those peepholes at hotels you can see out, but you can't see in.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't think Mr. Murray can even see or hear them. But it's the thing that really bothered me was this hive mind controlling this little 5-year-old boy.
Yeah.
And Meg just loses it because she's like, that's not Charles Wallace. That's something else. Right. Bring Charles Wallace back.
Right.
And you had nightmares about getting taken away. I had nightmares about the best way I can think of to describe it is the other mother. This person looks like your parent or your brother and acts like them, but it's not.
Ugh. Yeah. So Charles Wallace is under the power of the man with the red eyes, and they don't know what to do, but then they actually are able to save Alexander because of the glasses. Mrs. Who's glasses, which I think Calvin had, right?
Meg had them.
Meg had Mrs. Who's glasses, and Alexander's able to take them and use them to Tesser away with Meg and Calvin, but Charles Wallace gets left behind.
Yeah, because he is still attached to it. And this is after they have been taken to see it. And the reason Mr. Murray takes them away is because Calvin and Meg were about to submit to it. And, God, as a parent, having to choose between 2 children of mine, that would be devastating.
Yeah.
And Meg is furious with her father for leaving Charles Wallace behind.
Well, before that, she almost dies.
Yeah, because they had to go through the black thing.
They had to go through the black thing, and he didn't really know how to Tesser.
No. This is only his second time Tessering.
He Tessered, the first time he Tessered, he was captured by the black thing and taken to it. And this is only his second time Tessering, and so he's able to get them out. And Calvin and Dr. Murray are fine, but Meg almost dies. Luckily, the planet is inhabited by these eyeless, tentacled beasts
Yeah.
Which is because you're kind of scary sounding, honestly.
Yeah. They sound like the things from Meddling Kids.
Yeah, they're real kind of scary sounding.
Furry.
But they're actually very kind, and Meg is actually healed by one and she calls her Aunt Beast.
Yes.
But Aunt Beast is one of these creatures who uses her telekinetic abilities to kind of heal Meg and bring her back from the brink of death.
Yes,
there.
and Aunt Beast is very kind to Meg. She's everyone's like, Meg, you really shouldn't be doing this. And Aunt Beast is like, she's just been through a huge traumatic thing. Cut her some slack.
Yeah. Yeah, so Aunt Beast, it becomes Meg's kind of confidant here because she's very, very angry at her father for leaving Charles Wallace behind. Because Charles Wallace is, like, she loves her father, but even at this point in the book, I think she even says, like, Charles Wallace is the most important person in the world to her.
Yeah, because she's very protective of him, and, her father left when Charles Wallace was still a baby.
Her father went missing when Charles Wallace was only like a year old.
Yeah.
So he's been gone for so long. He doesn't even really know Charles Wallace.
No, he doesn't.
And for that reason, when Mrs. Who, Mrs. Whatsit, and Mrs. Witch arrive at the new planet, they tell Meg that she has to go back by herself to get Charles Wallace.
Yeah,
because
she is
nobody else has. Yeah, no one else has a strong enough bond to do it.
And she is told that she has something that it does not, and that will be her greatest weapon against it.
Yeah.
And she's not sure what it is.
They give her some gifts, though, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They give her some gifts like they did the first time. But, like, one of them tells Meg that, she's like, you have my love. I love you. That's all you always do. Don't ever doubt that.
And that's Mrs. Whatsit. And then Mrs. Who, I think, quotes her that Bible passage about how that God uses like fools to teach wise people, and how he uses weak people to teach strong people, and stuff like that. Kind of the insinuation that you don't have to be the most powerful to be the one who comes out on top here.
Exactly.
And then Miss Witch is the one who tells her that she has something that it doesn't have that will help her to save Charles Wallace.
Yeah, and she gets there and she realizes she's like, I am beyond anger and beyond fear now. The only thing that matters is Charles Wallace and getting him out. Because she thinks she's going to her death. Yeah.
And so she goes in to save Charles Wallace, and he's still under its influence, and she realizes, and this again is very esoteric, like it's
very esoteric for a kid's novel.
There's not a lot happening in the physical space. There's no like sword fight or like final battle. Meg just realizes that what it cannot do that she can is love something.
And she's like, I can't love this thing that is controlling Charles Wallace, but I can stand here and love Charles Wallace. And so she just keeps telling him she loves him. And just projecting that love as much as she can, and that's what breaks Charles Wallace out of it. And it is kind of alluded to that the moment Charles Wallace breaks out of its control, that something happens, because Mrs. Witch and Mrs. Who and Mrs. Whatsit have said they can't go to this planet.
And they arrive.
And they sweep up Meg and Charles Wallace. And they land, they land back home in the garden.
In the vegetable garden.
Mr. Murray is there, and Calvin is there, and the book pretty much ends with Mrs. Murray and the twins and everybody coming out.
Dr. Murray.
Reuniting. And
there's a big tearful reunion.
Yes, it's happy.
But
the three ladies are like, oh, we're sorry we can't say goodbye to you properly, but we have to, and they're gone. And that's the end of the book.
So basically the book ends with them getting their father back. Mm-hmm. Like it's interesting because it kind of speaks to the difference in how series are written now as opposed to how it used to be. Because this book, when you first start it,
if this was written today, they would not see their father till the last book, and he would die to save them.
Well, not even necessarily that, but just like the way it's presented, because like the goal in this book was Meg finds her father. Like, that was what the goal was. And then, like, in the process of that, they're suddenly informed about this galactic war that's going on between good and evil. And they don't fix that.
No.
They get one man away from the evil thing, but they don't save the universe.
I think at this point, Meg doesn't think that that's her responsibility. Her responsibility is her father.
Yeah, sure. There's you know, there's a lot of different things you can argue. It's just interesting because, like, if you think about it for 5 seconds, you're like, of course this is a setup for a sequel.
Yes.
Because the big bad guy hasn't actually been defeated.
Hasn't been touched.
But it doesn't present it that way. Like,
no.
They accomplished the goal they set out to at the beginning of the book. So you can, if you're not thinking, you might not even realize that there's another problem that has not been solved by the time you get to the last page, you know?
Yeah.
So it's more subtle than, like, the cliffhangers that you get at the end of books now. It's like, and what will happen next? Like, you know? So it's just kind of an interesting, and of course it is that very, very, very old cliche of the thing that helped you win in the end was the power of love, you know?
Hey, I like that.
I mean, it's well done, don't get me wrong. But
that's one of my favorite tropes is love is the most powerful thing in the universe.
You have to admit, it's a pretty overwrought.
If Star Wars can use it, I think it's fine.
Not what I would call
Star Wars, not new Star
example
Wars.
Of writing.
Old Star Wars.
I don't have a problem with the power of love. I'm just like, it can be cliched. It can be overdone.
It can be, but I'm okay with it.
But at any rate, this book ends with a pretty standard happily ever after. And the only real implication that there is anything else.
And there's 4 more books.
Yeah, is that the women disappear without finishing talking to the kids, and the fact that the darkness or the black thing
is still thing has not been defeated. But the way that the 3 women talk about it, it seems like the black thing is something that constantly has to be fought and can never be defeated. The way they talk about it.
Right. And, like, what Meg did to save Charles Wallace, like, it is implied that did damage. Like, she did some damage to it and to the black thing with her love for her brother. She didn't kill it. She didn't destroy it, but she did do some damage to it. And the books, I don't know, you've never read them. So the other books.
I don't know. I don't know what happens in the next 4.
So A Wrinkle in Time, A Wind in the Door.
A Swiftly Tilting Planet.
And Many Waters. Right?
And An Acceptable Time. They're all in the back of this book.
Time. Yep.
That's
Mine doesn't have that because they didn't exist yet when this book was published. This copy was published.
I think this one's 2007.
Yeah.
Edition.
So there are additional books that talk about Meg and Calvin and Charles Wallace's adventures through alternate universes with Mrs. Who and Mrs. What's It, Mrs. Which.
Mine has
the twins get involved.
The cast family tree.
Yeah, because the Murray family. Yeah, because the twins get involved eventually. It's been a long time since I've read any of the sequels, but they do kind of span over years as opposed to just like hours or days. And it's not about necessarily defeating the darkness. It's about continuing to fight against it. So the trope there, so the concept there being less about winning and more about persevering. Yeah.
Which I think is a good message in this day and age, especially right now.
Yeah, no shit. But it is a really fun book. It's a very quick read.
It is. It's very fun
to read. It's not very long.
No.
And,
my version's only 240. Well, no, never mind.
Mine's 211 pages, so it's.
I have interviews with the author and the expanding universe and stuff in the back of mine. Mine's 232 pages.
Yeah. So it's not a long book.
I read it in like an afternoon. It's great.
Yeah, and it can be read by young children. And like, again, it's one of those that's very popular for teachers to read out loud to kids. There is a made-for-TV movie, but there's also the live-action movie that's very big budget, the Disney one that came out.
Which I would like to see now.
My mom and I went and saw it together in theaters. It was pretty cute. Again, it's a very hard concept to translate into visual. So, like, there are definitely things I would have liked to see it do differently, but I think they changed the happy medium to a man. I think it was... Oh. I want to say it was Josh Gad.
Was it because there were too many women in this book?
I don't know.
Because all of the main important people in this book are women. There's the happy medium, there's the 3 misses, and then there's Meg. Those are like...
Oh, no, it's not Zach. It's not, it's Zach Galifianakis was the happy medium. In the movie.
Oh my.
No, he did a good job. I liked him. But yeah, the little girl who plays Meg is just an absolute doll. Reese Witherspoon, Oprah Winfrey, and who plays the other?
I don't know.
Mindy Kaling. Mindy Kaling plays the other one.
Oh.
And then the old one came out in 2003, the made-for-TV one.
Okay.
So. But yeah, the movies are fun. The book's great. It's a very quick read. I strongly recommend it. How many bottles would you give it, Liz?
I'd probably give it 3.75. I'd read it again. I am actually planning on reading it to my girls when they're older. I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. Like I said, this book found me at the right time. So it hit every note. I loved like the perseverance, the message of love, the there were points where it did get a little religious-y.
Yeah,
but something written in 1962, I understand that. But it also pointed out a lot of the Kamata's the society there pointed out where it's like we should celebrate people's differences and their individuality and what makes them different, because if not, the society is absolutely terrifying. And they even say that people with disabilities and people who are different are put out of their misery. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, excuse me? Even in Starfleet, that is illegal.
Yeah. No, Madeleine L'Engle was a Christian. She died when she was 88, it looks like. But yeah, she was very into science fiction and but very strong in a Christian religious belief. She was an Episcopalian. But that you can kind of see that in here. She believed in universal salvation. Yeah. Which I don't know how much people know about that, but like it's not a very common belief within Western Christianity. A lot of Western Christians believe you have to ask for, or you have to be of a certain level of goodness or whatever. So you can kind of see that like optimism in there. But yeah, I definitely agree that the religious overtones can be a little much sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. But the overall optimism of the book was definitely something I really needed right now. I am so tired of doom and gloom and drama right now. I wanted something that was, I really needed something that was, cliche, the power of love will save us all, and the power of compassion and sweetness and kindness towards one another. Yeah. And celebrating our differences instead of punishing them. Right. I really enjoyed that. So yes, I enjoyed the book very much. I will be reading it again because I will be reading it to my daughters. How many bottles would you give it, Casey? How many bottles?
How many bottles? I would probably give it 3.5 myself. Like I said, I really enjoy it. It's a very fond memory for me. I was very young the first time I read it. But I've also read it a billion times. And it is for a little bit younger of a crowd. And the religious imagery gets a little much sometimes. It's kind of how I feel about like Narnia series as well. It's just sometimes Narnia, I'm like, it's a little too much for me as far as the religion goes. But overall, really love it.
This book did kind of give me a Narnia vibe.
Yeah, it's got a similar energy to Narnia. I think they're both portal fiction. Yeah, they're both a little bit fantasy, a little bit sci-fi, and they both have pretty heavy Christian religious imagery. So, yeah, I would definitely say it falls into that same category as the Narnia series, which I also love. But again, sometimes I just get tired of the religious imagery. So I would say 3.5, but that still gives us a good, 3 2/3 bottles?
Yeah, hold on. I'll pull up the calculator.
3.666 repeating, I would guess.
3.625. So if anybody is really good at math shortcuts.
That's 3 2/3 or close to it.
Yeah, 3 2/3.
So,
which is more than enough to get you drunk.
One can only hope. So that was a little bit of a shorter episode, but also
it's a shorter book.
Tired, and the book is short, and I'm tired.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you guys liked that, let us know. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We also have a website at literaturepodcast.com.
We also have a Patreon if you're feeling exceptionally generous over there. If you give even just at the lowest tier, you get bonus footage of us every single month. You get a blooper reel, which is hilarious.
Our personal drinking list.
Yes, our personal drinking lists. And if you pay us enough money, you can pay us to read whatever book you want.
Yeah.
You could pay us to read Twilight. Or
you could pay us to read My Immortal. My Immortal. Oh, God.
You could also pay us to read your erotic bear fan fiction. I don't know. If you pay us enough, I'd read it.
I'm down to clown. Whatever. I'll read anything.
Yeah, sure. No clowns. I don't like clowns.
We're reading It now. Surprise.
No, we're not. We are reading The Time Traveler's Wife next.
Yes, we're reading The Time Traveler's Wife next because the theme of the month, like I said before, was time travel, is time travel. Was time travel, will be time travel? Who can say?
It was time travel?
It will be.
It depends on if you subscribe to Einstein's idea of time, that all time is happening at once and humans have to make it linear to understand it, or if you think of if time is just a big ball of wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff.
I personally subscribe to the theory of pandemic time belief, which that time is not real and does not exist at all. And we are all just floating through the void of space waiting to die.
Wow, Casey. Are you okay?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to go with time is happening all at once.
All right.
Einstein's much smarter than I am.
You keep to your science and nonsense. I'll be over here in
my science and physics.
With my watermelon vodka. All right, folks. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. For more information, visit us at litliteraturePodcast.com or check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. And remember, too much work and no vacation deserves at least a small libation. Cheers!